It is being bold. It is being brilliant. It's being non-apologetic about what we're doing.
You know, we had to leverage those abilities and just to come to the table and execute like never before.
Bring in capable people, coach them, make sure they're connected to the outcome, and let them run.
As a leader and with your team, have to have the will to win.
Connecting more with our humanity and, pausing for a moment to be the human beings that we are.
But with humility, you know that you can leverage that skill set that people have and let them be their best.
This will be a time of innovation.
Hi, and welcome to Courageous Leadership in Times of Global Crisis and Uncertainty, an HMG live virtual briefing covering what matters most to drive a winning agenda and make the future a better place. A warm welcome to today's host, Lead Principal and CEO of HMG Strategy, Hunter Muller.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the 2020 St. Louis Virtual CIO Summit. I'm Hunter Muller, Lead Principal of HMG Strategy. My team and I are delighted to be here with you, virtually in our new format. Since March 12th, we've been virtual and digital on a global level. Just finished up Monday in London, the other day in Charlotte. And we're able to bring to you a really tight show, a really tight program. And I think today's summit is really another world-class collaboration between us, the St. Louis Advisory Board, the St. Louis Conference Chairs, Lisa Nichols and the team, and Reimagining business and the future of work. It's what you need to know now. So we couldn't do what we do at HMG without really some amazing partners. We'll hear more from our partners CyberArk, Ivanti, and Rimini Street. Truly appreciate your support. Please check out their products and services. They really make this event happen, and this event is powered by CyberArk, Ivanti, and Rimini Street. So look, the digital journey has been interesting for us with some amazing value drivers, both our CIO and CISO virtual summits. We've been able to highlight some really amazing partners, like the partners today that are helping you pivot digitally in the work from home environment. We have a podcast series as well, and there's just been amazing growth and experience in the whole business model as we've been able to reach speakers that we were not able to reach in the past, to bring them in right to your desktop. So continue tuning into some of our future summits. We have a financial service summit coming up in July 1st out of New York, Silicon Valley, July 2nd, and including other vendor-related podcasts and so forth coming up as well. So we're really, couldn't be more thrilled with the fact that we're dialed in socially. We're doing over 100,000 views now a week. Thanks to the HMG team, August and the others, an incredible effort. But please continue to support us and that digital engagement and retweet and or post on LinkedIn what we're doing here at HMG Strategy, connecting this digital divide with you in this work from home environment. Again, a whole bunch of different events. We'll be running these right through into 2021. We view a vision of always being digital, always being virtual, with the speed and ability to get youth connected to thought leaders and the best world-class thinkers around the most pressing issues today that really, really, truly do matter. Upcoming webinars include Ivanti, Okta, and others, so please dial in and support us. So again, thank you for zooming in today. Our first guest today is one of the early founders of CyberArk, Nir Gertner, Chief Security Strategist at CyberArk. Nir, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Hunter. Thanks for having me.
Hey, great to see you. You know, you guys have an amazing culture at CyberArk. I think if we've learned one thing in life out of this current environment that we've been through is people matter, cultures matter, diversity matters, right? A little bit about the early on days of CyberArk and the founding, being a early founding partner.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, it has been a pretty long journey. You know, 20 years ago we started out of small office in a really rough neighborhood in one of the suburbs of Tel Aviv. Some very interesting stories, about that. But fast forward, 20 years, being a public company with over 5,000 enterprise customers, 1,500 employees, global in over 70 countries. It was quite a journey. But you're absolutely right. Looking at this journey and the various ups and downs, of course, that we had during that time, what makes the company strong and last, the technology changes, the market changes, our products are drastically different than what we originally imagined back in 1999. But it's really the people, right? And the organizational DNA, because some people change, but there is an organizational DNA that you really try to maintain throughout the years.
So what can we learn from that? Innovation and speed matter, and that creative mindset, open mindset, driving towards a customer satisfaction or customer excellence. Talk to us a little bit more about that, Nir.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, there is the human factor, and there are the customers that we're serving. At the end of the day, these have to align. And I was thinking about, again, kind of like going back to the early days where we were dreaming big and thinking about getting this customer or that brand name, and at a certain point to start getting various customers on board. And it does become personal. And I think this is the maybe unique thing about security, because you have a common goal with a customer. We're really in the same boat. If a credit card company is breached, it is my data that is being breached. If an airline is breached, and so on. At a certain point, we had things like, my daughter told me, oh, I love this product, or I love this brand, and now they're a customer of yours. It just gets personal. This is the college I went to, and now, they are on board. So I think that having that kind of mindset, that we all have the stake in the game, just helps you to come to the customer with a more consultative approach, without being salesy, right? It allows the customer to open up, and really at the end of the day, it's just a better partnership and longer-term relationship.
Nir, let's talk about the ever-evolving role of the CISO and CIO. How do you see the role of CISO changing, and what are this current environment we're in? What are the leadership challenges?
Yeah, so we'll start with CISOs, right? The CISO's role is definitely changing. I mean, there are a lot of things that, we all know, right? Security becomes a board level discussion in most organizations, if it's not already there, or depending on the maturity level. And that took some effort from our side, because we were not really used to having these kind of conversations. We really had to adapt and step a little bit out of our comfort zone and have discussions that are risk-based, for example, which is a language that, the board understands, rather than to talk to them about, how many rules we have in our SIM tool and so on. So that's from a management perspective. Technology, the collapse of the perimeter, it's really a shift from a network-based security to an identity-centric security, which is really, really important. That's all the zero trust, remote work from anywhere today, right? And compound all of that with the cloud and digital transformation, bigger attack surface, new types of technologies, attack vectors, considerations that we were not used to. And suddenly the CISO sometimes even find themselves kind of not really being involved in things because, these are the cloud architects, these are the developers that take care of that. And again, the CISO kind of have to reinvent themselves and attach themselves into these processes.
Any tips on how a CISO can better engage with those other subgroups across the enterprise?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all starts with, first of all, listening, right? So what are their needs? What are their pain points? A lot of times CISOs seem to see themselves as, we come here with the answer. Here's the security that you need to put in place. And obviously a more consultative approach, understanding the business needs there. It's a transition that CIOs also went through, right? From being very technology-centric to being business enablers. And today the CISO is really expected to be a business enabler as well, and not just kind of like the guy that owns the risk. And maybe on that point, I think there's an important point to be made about how CIOs and CISOs can really collaborate better together. And it is a risk-based discussion. The notion that the CISO owns the risk and the business, the line of business, just wants to drive forward as quickly as possible, just creates a lot of inherent tension in it. There is no real way to solve that. And I think that if we understand that there is shared responsibility there, and we need to understand what is the residual risk, really who owns the risk, right? It just does not make sense that I can do whatever I want and the CISO owns the risk, right? So this is something where the CISO should come with, look, line of business. You have an application that you need to roll out. You have your business goals. I'll give you a menu of options, and you can choose from, so to speak, doing nothing to doing everything, right? But at the end of the day, let's understand what is the residual risk and let's accept this risk together. Then I think that really the business decisions are being made with security in mind and not with security being the delayer of processes.
That takes real good leadership and interpersonal skills to get that level of trust and relationship in place. Let's switch gears. Talk about privileged access security. Why is that so important?
Yeah, so privileged access security, which is really the main thing that CyberArk does, protects the privileged access pathways to our most sensitive assets, the most sensitive data and systems that we have in an organization. Think about your DBAs, think about your cloud architects, think about whoever owns your AWS console, right? And at the end of the day, this is really what the attackers are after. If you think about kind of like a typical attack chain, we all know, right? It starts with some kind of phishing. Somebody will click on the wrong link. Somebody will open the wrong attachment. But Hunter, they're not after you or I, right? We have nothing of interest on our workstations. But what the attackers are doing later is they start moving laterally across the organization and start escalating their privileges, finding more interesting stuff. Here is a password that was hard-coded inside a script. Here is somebody that runs with admin rights, although they shouldn't be, and so on and so forth. And this is really how they advance their attacks until they get to kind of what they want to achieve at the end of the day. And 100%, 99% of attacks take this path, and you can see that in the Mandiant report, in the Verizon report, and so on. And that's really why this is top of mind for all security practitioners today. It is top of mind with the CIS Top 20 framework, consulting firms, analyst firms. They all put privileged account security as a basic foundational layer that you have to have in place. Otherwise, everything that you build on top really doesn't have good foundations.
Nir, in the current enterprise architecture, working from home, why is this such a big issue?
Oh, yeah. First and foremost, it just increases the attack surface, right? And we heard that really in that phase one of COVID, when we were all really scrambling to enable our workforce to work from home with their home Wi-Fi routers and so on. So suddenly, and we all knew that the perimeter is going down, right? But there was nothing like this reality check where really in a matter of a day or a week, we had all of our workforce working from home. Now we're working with the cloud. That's kind of something that we all do for a long time. But that is really, that's another attack surface that just becomes much broader. So how do we take these kind of like zero trust concepts and strong authentication and so on and apply them not just to the general workforce, but even more importantly to the people that have the privileged access to these privileged accounts?
Excellent, Nir. Where does CyberArk play? In the enterprise, mid-cap, small cap, all the above?
So we're mainly enterprise. We have a lot of customers that are, let's call it, smaller than the big enterprises. So you can call them SMEs, right? I don't know exactly where the line goes, but every organization that has any kind of IT footprint, which is all of them, have this problem, right? Even if you're born in the cloud and everything that you do is just cloud-based, you have your AWS console, you have your access to Google, GCP, whatever you have, right? These are privileged identities, they have to be protected.
Nir, thank you so much for coming on the program. CyberArk is a must look at, top pick by HMG Strategy. Appreciate your support and engagement. How can people get in touch with you?
My pleasure, Hunter. Thank you so much. Go to our website, www.cyberark.com. Go to my LinkedIn account. We're very accessible.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Nir. Talk to you soon. Next up, Maria Russo. Maria is the CIO of Washington University Medical School. Maria, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great to be here. Great to have you here. So look, give us a little context of your role at the school and what the last 3 months have been like.
Yeah. So so my role at the School of Medicine at the university is where I'm responsible for all of the IT function for the school, and that cuts across all our missions. We have 3 main missions at the university. One is patient care, and one is education, and one is research. And the School of Medicine and the university as a whole is really, it's known as a leader in teaching research and patient care, and so it's really good to be at an organization where we're really impacting what's happening in the medical profession today, and that applies to over the last 3 months with COVID and the coronavirus and how we're stepping up to identify things, tests that will help us maybe get mass testing out into the world, how we are actually thinking about bringing a university back to life, and what are some of the things that we need to do in order to protect the employees, the students, the faculty. So it's been a really challenging time. The coronavirus pandemic has really impacted everyone's lives so dramatically and so significantly. And it's really forcing, IT functions to mobilize in ways and timeframes that, previously, especially in university settings, have really been unheard of. And all of a sudden we have to figure out how to send people home, bring people back, protect them from, a pandemic, and figure out, what is the hybrid model that we need to, get to at the end of the day so that people feel comfortable to come back. So it's been really a kind of a roller coaster.
Maria, it sounds like you've done a great job, and you really handled it beautifully. How would you characterize your leadership style, and how did you mobilize your team?
Yeah, so I'm my leadership style is one where it's trust but verify, not a micromanager, and in this day and age of sending people home, you kind of have to figure out how to balance that, and how that how your leadership style has to change a little bit with that, is, you got to stay connected to the team, but really mobilizing the team. The first thing that we had to do is, figure out, how are we going to shut down? How are we going to take operations, and not just IT operations, but all different facets of our missions, operations, and how are we going to send people home? And so we really needed to bring our team together, talk a lot about, what is our process for getting employees home. We needed to make sure those that were going home could access all the different VPNs and had the right equipment to do their jobs for those who could do their jobs from home. And we needed to, take a look at, how do we break down equipment? We got to the point where we had to take some of our standard equipment that's in our offices and just, help people bring those pieces of equipment home, not just laptops, but, tower PCs and printers and things like that to make them operational. And so we really needed to kind of think through all of that. And at one point in time, we were like, well, we need to order some equipment to make sure we have some, fail safes if our VPN access is too getting too bogged down. Can we do a hot swap with a piece of equipment that will make us a little bit more, increase that bandwidth and make us more responsive as people try and, connect from home.
How did you keep everyone safe and healthy?
Yeah, so we had to do a couple things to think about that. Obviously, the people who were home, working from home and stayed home, that was, that's something that they, they were sort of self-quarantining, so that was actually really good. But we did have a number of people who needed to be here on site, especially in the clinical space. And so in order to keep our team healthy, the first thing that we did was we tried to identify those individuals that were immunocompromised. And we said, you need to stay home. You need to go home, and we gave them activities to do there so that they were productive. And then anyone who lived with someone who had, compromised immunities, we said, you need to stay home. Then we took volunteers who wanted to be here on site and quote unquote roam the halls. And so we had some volunteers, and then there were some people who we needed to just say, we had to volunteer them to be here, and they had to supplement those who were rotating to be on and off site on an ongoing basis. The key things that we did was we provided gloves, masks, hand sanitizer. We've developed a process for people, especially our desktop support team, to wipe down their machines before they work on it, wipe it down after they're done working on it. And then anyone who physically needed to be in the office, we gave guidance that you needed to wipe down your workspace before you worked every morning. Even if you felt like nobody was going to be in your office or in your cube, you still had to go through that process. And that was really, very helpful for people to feel more secure and comfortable about not getting the disease while we were here. And then we did contactless delivery of our equipment. We even went to people's homes and dropped things off on on their porches, and waited for them to pick up the equipment so nobody came and stole it before they received it. Or we had specific drop-off places where we would drop off the equipment and let our end users come and pick it up as they needed.
So as a leader, one of the hardest things is like leading a team in a crisis, right? What did you learn about team dynamics, and what worked out? What was successful for you?
Yeah, the most interesting thing about team dynamics was, it wasn't a matter of objectively doing their jobs. It turned into a much more emotional type of event, which actually surprised me. There was a lot of emotion, especially around fear of getting the virus when when they came in, fear of, touching a package and getting the virus. And I think the most important thing in terms of, trying to alleviate that fear was, making sure people feel comfortable that they had the right PPE, that they were being heard about how they felt, and you maybe course corrected some of the things. Maybe someone said, I want to be here for a couple of weeks, but now I want to go home for a little bit, and so you rotated people out. It was really about listening and understanding the emotions that were happening, and then based on what you heard, change perhaps, a course correct, maybe the way you were going.
Hey, someone said to me, it's not a sprint, this is a marathon. How are you keeping morale up? That's a big issue, right?
Yeah, that kind of goes along hand in hand with the emotions. Morale is, it's tough because, many organizations, including ours, we had furloughs, and, people are nervous and they're, hopeful that, they will be called back from furlough. And, I think one of our tactics was to just really engage with our employees often. We held daily huddles so that they could talk about what was happening, issues and barriers that we could remove from their working lives, their emotional lives, their, just making sure they had a lifeline to, people. And I think the other thing we did was we held a little bit more frequent team meetings where we shared statistics about, what was happening in the region about coronavirus and what was happening in the organization. Just keeping those lines of communications open. And lastly, we asked every single leader who had individuals who reported to them to, basically touch base periodically, not necessarily every day, but maybe every other day, every couple of days, more than once a week, just to, say, hey, how are you how's it doing? How are you doing? How's it going? How you feeling? Kind of address and take a pulse on, where the emotions really were, and make sure there were services that the organization provides to our employees, as many do. And we also made sure that when we talked to our employees, we shared with them what those services were and encouraged them to take advantage of them if they were feeling that they needed to.
Hey, Maria, thank you so much for coming on the program today. A real treat. I love the humanistic point of view, your leadership style and skills, how you kept the morale up. You're really, you and your team are heroes, and being in the front line there. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Great. Well, hopefully you can stay to the end. We'll see you later. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye now. Next up, our partner company, Ivanti, Phil Richards. He's the CISO of Ivanti. Phil, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, Hunter. Appreciate it.
Great to see you. A little bit about Ivanti. What's unique about the culture of Ivanti? What's truly different?
Well, Ivanti is one of those companies. I've been at Ivanti for now about 4 years, and really feel like I found a home when I first came here. It's been a great journey, and some of the reasons for that are, first of all, I feel like everyone is really invested in the direction that the company is going. I feel like as a complete organization, we have some purpose and some real focus on what we're trying to do for our customers, and that permeates through from the top of the organization all the way down to everybody within the group. I feel like that there's just some real good synergy trying to make sure that we're enabling our customers, and that it means that what I do on a day-to-day basis, I can see where that matters, and I can see how that provides value to the organization.
Excellent stuff, Phil. So what are the primary challenges that Ivanti is addressing?
Well, a few different things, I guess. One of the things that we're addressing for our customers really has to do with this whole vulnerability management process, I think. When you think about it, right now, with everybody largely working from home, one of the biggest challenges is how do we make sure that our systems, our IT systems, and Ivanti is really focused on the IT systems, how do we make sure that those systems continue to stay patched, continue to stay with the right level of configuration management and all that kind of stuff. And we're trying to do that in an environment where a lot of people are working from home, or they've brought their own devices in from their own homes, stuff like that. So that entire process adds an additional challenge. Right now, a lot of what's happening is that the criminals are being very proactive in terms of doing having additional access and that sort of thing. We're seeing an increase in ransomware. We're seeing an increase in companies being compromised as a result of largely a result of their workforce working from home. And so that is a lot of what we're trying to address. In addition to the whole patching and vulnerability process, we are also real focused in the service management area. So that's the whole idea of wrapping your process up around the business activities. So making sure that you have a workflow that maps to your business activities, and making sure that these processes that we were talking about earlier, like patching and vulnerability and that kind of thing, that there's really a process that you're going through to make sure that those activities are well defined and well understood, and you're also able to be able to get to an audit through those kind of activities.
Phil, culture and relationships matter so much, and that relationship between the CIO and the CISO at times is delicate. Why is it more important than ever for them to be working closely together and tightly?
Well, I'll tell you, that relationship between the CIO and the CISO is absolutely critical, especially now where there are so many IT challenges, and at the same time, there are security challenges. The IT organization is really focused operationally on making sure that that the organization or the team has the technology that they need in order to be able to accomplish the mission of the company. The security team needs to continue to stay focused on that, and at the same time have insight the fact that we need to be careful. We need to make sure that we're providing the right level of security, because we don't want the enablement to run out so fast that it really causes a threat and a risk to the point where a ransomware kind of attack can come in and really devastate the business. So those two organizations, those two teams need to be working really hand in hand in order to better enable the workforce is really where that comes to.
So for the CISO, what are the top things they should be focusing on now?
Well, a couple of different things I think that the CISO should be focusing on. I kind of think about 5 different things that the CISO really needs to be looking at. We talked a little bit about patching and the whole vulnerability management process. That's one of the critical things. One of the other things that's really important with your workforce working from home right now is training. When individuals work from home, oftentimes they relax their their thoughts, they relax their standards. Maybe they'll click on something in an email that they wouldn't click on normally, and so they need to be able to be reminded that that those same rules that apply in the office also apply at home, and making sure that you have that kind of enablement training is really important. One of the other things that we need to focus on is enterprise risk. The world is different right now, and things are moving around pretty quickly, and we need to be looking at these challenges and opportunities from a risk perspective. And I think Nir talked a little bit about this earlier. It is real important that we think about these activities from that risk perspective, and how does that bring new risk into the environment? How can we mitigate that risk? That sort of thing. One of the other things sorry, go ahead.
When you think of Ivanti and you think of your mission and charter, technology, you got process and you got people, how do you think of the charter and how you help your clients through that roadmap going forward?
The process roadmap, sorry, Hunter, it was breaking up a little bit. The process roadmap for people working?
So you think of people, process and technology. How do you help your client think through that roadmap?
Well, that's a really good question. And really the idea here is that these are 3 legs to a stool, and all 3 of them need to be there, and they need to be relatively equal in strength in order for the stool or the organization to kind of stand up. People, processes, and technology are really drive the intellectual property for your organization, and we need to be thinking about those three areas as assets for the organization, and they need to be in balance. You can't have technology running the organization, just like you can't have process running the organization, or strong-headed individuals running the organization. The whole thing needs to be kind of in balance, and in order to make sure that the company's goals and objectives are able to be met. So yeah, that's where that is.
And your charter at Ivanti?
Well, I've a couple of different things. Ivanti, first of all, I guess, really produces products and cloud services to help companies kind of manage their IT infrastructure. This goes from workstations to servers to network appliances, and as well as service desk and that sort of thing. Ivanti helps business organizations really focus on their own business goals by making sure that their IT infrastructure is taken care of. That helps an organization really focus in on their own business goals and win. For me, I have a couple of different roles at Ivanti. I'm the head of risk and security and compliance within the company, and in addition to that, I also run the federal or the public sector FedRAMP program.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is, and some days I feel like, but I have a really good team, and so that ends up helping a lot. You can't do this kind of a job alone. You have to have a great team, and I feel like my own team, my own style is really collaborative, and I try to make sure that the folks on my team have the charter and the authorization to make sure that they can really run things within their own sphere.
Thanks, Phil. When you think of effective ways CISOs and their teams can protect their organizations, what are some of the top 3 things CISOs can be doing today?
Well, a few different things I think that CISOs really need to be focused in on. One of them is has to do with asset management, particularly now with everybody working from home. All of the assets within your organization have changed. So we've got home networks and work from home or BYOD devices. You might have challenges that you might not have had in the past. Network bandwidth being affected because your children are doing some educational thing or simply watching Netflix, something like that. Those kind of things now impact your business world. So you need to be thinking about that from what's changed, what's new and what's different, and how do I control and manage. And in order to control and manage that, you have to be able to inventory and count and understand what's out there running. So asset management is really important. We talked a little bit about vulnerability management before, and that's another critical area. Vulnerability management is this idea of what threats are coming into the environment and how well positioned am I and is the organization to be able to kind of handle and address those. And then one of the third thing that CISOs need to be focused in on is endpoint management. And this is especially true now with folks working from home. The definition of the endpoint has changed quite a bit. And as a result, we need to be kind of focused in on what those endpoints are, what they look like, and how we can protect those endpoint assets.
Phil, thanks so much for coming on the program today. How can people get in touch with you and Ivanti?
Well, you can go to Ivanti.com. There's lots of places where you can be in touch there. I'm also, as Nir mentioned in his, I'm on LinkedIn as well, and we're very accessible there.
Excellent. Great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Hunter.
Good job. Next up, Chet Guess. He's the CTO of Kingdom Capital. Chet, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It was great to meet you the other day. You have an amazing journey. A little context of your journey, where you came from, and what you're doing now at Kingdom Capital in St. Louis.
So thanks for the question. So I had the pleasure of working for General Electric Company for 25 years. And so I spent all of that time in Louisville, Kentucky. So I come from Louisville, Kentucky, but I worked around 179 countries. GE was in charge of, and as far as their platform and that conglomerate. I was a chief technology officer of a few divisions. I ended my career as a chief technology officer of GE over all of its infrastructure and its product development. So the last 3 years was difficult for me. I would say that I physically lived in a different city than my family, and it gave me the opportunity to really look at what I wanted to do and what was important to me. And I had 3 young children, 2 older children from a previous marriage, and I looked at myself in the mirror and said, I really need to think about doing something different. Now, given the pandemic and everybody's working remotely, maybe you made a different decision, but I tell you, it was an opportunity for me in those 3 years to get in touch with a book called the Bible and a church and a focus on me and look at myself inwardly and think about what it is that I could do to sort of better myself. And I was really on what I would call that second mountain, right? I climbed that first mountain. And I asked myself, is this it? And I was really seeking to do something that was bigger than myself. GE was going through a lot of change, and I got an opportunity to sit down with my boss and say, look, it's time maybe that I should step aside and do something different. And so they gave me the opportunity to retire. And so I retired, and I had been along that way, along the journey. I was GE was a big company, a big customer of worldwide technology. And I got to know Dave Stewart in the process, and Dave became a friend, a mentor and a coach. And he was always there to sort of talk to me about what I was going through and to guide me as a fellow African-American, in business and doing what we do in IT. It was very helpful. Introduced me to Brandon Mann, who was the CEO of Kingdom Capital. And we created a relationship and a friendship too. And so I got the opportunity to retire. I retired May 31st, and I joined Kingdom Capital June the 1st. So I took about 12 hours off, 4 of which I was probably driving to St. Louis to be with the team. So, and it's been a fantastic journey, and love being here and a part of this community.
So tell us a little bit, fascinating story, by the way. Tell us a little bit about the mission of Kingdom Capital.
So Kingdom Capital is a private investment firm founded by Brandon and Dave. And it's really focused on investing values-driven capital to really increase the internal rate of return, and we call it the eternal rate of return, right? So to maximize that. And so this term eternal rate of return is something that is near and dear to us. And so being values-driven, and we talk about values-driven, we call it our shield values. All of those have, Christian, basis for us, but it really doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a Christian company for us to do business with you or to invest in you. Our shield values are service, humility, integrity, excellence, love, and diversity. And we try to display those every day in what it is that we do. We are a company that, actually prays together and studies together and really tries to better ourselves. But that eternal rate of return, we believe values drive valuation. And we think, from an IRR perspective, we're going to get the best from you. And from an ERR perspective, we want the best for you. And so we believe that if you have, founders and leadership teams that actually create cultures that are conducive to people growing, the care of people and the care and feeding of people, that those companies perform better. So we target those kinds of companies. And those are the companies we want to invest in. I would say from a Kingdom Capital perspective, what makes us unique as well is that we have a philanthropic arm to that. So, part of what it is that we do is to make profits in order to invest in 501(c)s in our philanthropic arm. So we're in the business of making money just to give that money away. We also have what I would say 2 strategic partnerships. In Washington University, we have a collaborative agreement to commercialize their research, and it gives us an opportunity to work within this community in St. Louis and in Washington University. Then we have a strategic relationship with Worldwide Technology, having the same founder that Worldwide has. And so you utilize those 2 relationships, and it gives a startup and a startup community a real leg up, in that we have a $12 billion company in Worldwide Technology that's behind our startups and what it is we need to do to grow them. And then we're building companies out of WashU. And so we've started 2 companies. One is Perchaya, that's actively working on the COVID-19 scenario along with WashU, and another one is Integral Theranostics, is helping us discover cancer utilizing a special contrasting agent, and IT, cancer vision goggles to be able to see cancer in an open surgery. So it's vastly different to be a CTO over infrastructure for 179 countries and then sitting in with doctors at WashU and being able to talk to other people to see how IT is actually put to work in different ways.
Sounds fascinating. It sounds like you're on a mission, a higher calling.
Well, I am. One of the things I prayed for discernment, and I wanted God to guide me to what it is that I thought He wanted me and where He wanted me to be. And God talks to you when you turn the noise off. You can hear Him. He was always talking to me, and the noise was incredible in my previous roles because of the stress and the time and all the other things. And it's amazing, how God has brought people around me and has guided me in the right ways, and put me in the right positions. People like, Lisa Nichols was one of the first people that I met coming to St. Louis, and we're all 1 degree of separation. Everybody on here knows who Lisa is, and just being attached to Lisa and Greg and their mission and what they're doing in their company, and to be able to grow that, but to do something bigger than yourself. I'm a seasoned veteran now. I guess that's code word for one of the older guys. And, I've climbed that first mountain, and there's just so many things that we can do. And I look at the world condition today, Hunter, and I look at what's going on, and I look at the fact that, that I am a minority and I have a responsibility that's greater than just me taking care of my own family. It's about setting the example. It's about showing what diversity really looks like. It's being an example that's not sports related or that's not entertainment related, and being in one of those, quote unquote stereotypical roles, is that I have a responsibility from where I sit too, and I don't carry that lightly.
Fascinating stuff. How would you measure progress in your new role? You must have some goals.
Oh, the progress is really, the ERR piece and the impact that we make on our portfolio companies and their families and the people that work within those companies are absolutely top of mind for us, but it's also in building out those platforms and those portfolios and those companies to actually to give back to our communities in a philanthropic way. And so you look at the sort of at the micro, what you're doing on every individual company level and all the employees and the culture in which we drive. And we have a leadership institute that comes in and led by Brian Bennett, looks at the employees, looks at the leaders, looks at the happiness of the cultures of the company. We measure those things. And then, you know, driving the return from that perspective and then turning that around and saying, all right, how do we take what it is we do and make a larger impact in our community by taking, you know, profits and giving investors opportunity to invest in 501(c)s in clients in a different way.
You know, Chet, this has been a great interview. Final closing thoughts on the relationship with WWT and Dave?
Actually, you know, Dave, it's been a godsend to have that relationship with him, and you know, to be able to have a minority at that level, to be able to look to him as an example of what it is I could be, especially what's going on, Hunter, in the world today, and so it's the fact that we have prayer calls, you know, every week, and the leadership and the spirituality in which he shows. And we just have to continue to you know, do the right things and to reach and have the right conversations and have the tough conversations to be able to further the agenda that says, you know, God, this isn't a black and white issue. You know, we all share, most of us, something that's common. Let's stop focusing on what's different. Let's focus on what's common. And that is, we have a God that is love. In that, you know, quite frankly, loving thy neighbor should mean something to us, and we should focus on our Bibles and our roots, and we can do a lot of great things together.
Chet, what an amazing story. Thank you so much for coming on today's summit and today's program. Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Please stay with us. We have a great final closing talk from Jason Wells around motivation.
Thank you, sir.
Good to see you. Next up, everyone knows and loves Lisa Nichols in the St. Louis area, CEO of Technology Partners. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Hi, Hunter. It's good to see you.
Always good to see you. Take it away.
All right. Well, I have got an amazing panel, and if you guys would all go ahead and turn on your videos, that would be great. We've got a lot to talk about today. We've got about 30 minutes, but we've got 5 of us, so we're going to go pretty quickly here. But here's who we have real quick. We've got Bhavani Amirthalingam from Ameren that's on with us, Eduard de Vries from SSM. We've got Craig Mackereth from Rimini Street, Shrikant Ramachandran from Mallinckrodt, and Kevin Haskew from on Semiconductor. So guys, thank you so much. And Hunter, I just have to tell you, thank you so much to you and your team actually for making this possible. This is really, you know, our inaugural virtual summit, and I'm just so excited. It's been great so far. So let's go ahead, guys, and get into it. I am looking. Okay, so is everybody on? All right, let's go ahead and get into it. You know, let's see, did I get some feedback there? I'm sorry. Let's talk about real quickly. I mean, while we would not have wished this pandemic on the world, we would not have ever done that because obviously there's been really awful things. But if each of you could just take a minute and talk about like 1 or 2 bright spots that you've seen, and then we're going to move into some other things.
Sure, Lisa, Bhavani here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, Bhavani.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
Very good. Hey, thanks for having me here today, and you know, excited to share you know, our experiences. Obviously, it's been unprecedented, but I'll tell you, it's the shift that we had to do within, you know, probably a week to 10 days from, you know, just being able to respond to the crisis was actually amazing to watch, you know. And I think, you know, within a week, we shifted about 65% of our coworker base at Ameren. And so I think, just that agility and decision-making and things that we did during that period of time was amazing to watch and something we want to continue to preserve. And, now that we've been remote for several months, I think some of the really positive things that we are seeing, and there are a number of challenges as well, but when I look at some of the positive sides of things, I think, it's a little contrary to what many might think. I think people are actually more connected now than they have been with respect, especially knowing, your fellow coworkers at a more personal level, what's going on in their lives, because everyone's kind of home and work life has, kind of integrated truly in that sense. And so I think there's a lot more appreciation and patience and acknowledgement for everyone's reality. So I think that's a huge positive. I do think a significant part of the organization, at least for us, has been extremely productive. Things have been, really hectic and just the culture of the organization. No one wants, anything to fall through the cracks. So it's just been, everyone's kind of been rallying to it. So productivity has been amazing as well. So I think, just being able to take these key things of how we, work together, how we care for each other, how we are creative. We've been extremely creative and innovative, and that whole flexibility, agility, keeping that in our DNA long term, I think will do everyone good.
So that's something you're definitely going to carry forward, Bhavani, right? I say there's some things that we're going to leave behind that we want to leave behind, but then there's some things that we want to carry forward, and that's one of them. So it sounds like it really has not hurt productivity at Ameren or employee engagement. In fact, maybe you're a little bit more connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Our engagement's been fantastic. Productivity has been fantastic.
Very good. Can I hear from somebody else? Shri, you want to speak up?
Sure, yeah, thank you for having me. This is wonderful dialogue. And I think just building upon what Bhavani just said, I think from a, an individual as well as an enterprise perspective, I see three things which are sort of the bright spot in all of these things. First of all, I do want to acknowledge and recognize there's been a lot of not so good things, unfortunately, that have happened. And we all recognize that we have a lot of sympathy and empathy for everything that's happened, and my heart goes to every one of them. And I sincerely hope that this will end very, very soon. On the bright side, if you look at these personal side and the enterprise side, I think there are three things. One is there is a heightened level of empathy through all of these things. I see that, what there's an acceptance level that is very different now. Even when simple things like when people get on a video call or on a conference call like this, and if a child is crying behind, or if a kid comes in, or if your dog comes in, it's all accepted. Even if it's a serious interview, it's kind of accepted. It feels a little more personal. People see that other side, like Bhavani said, people see the other side of individuals in their homes and in their environment outside of home. And I think that gives a different level of connectivity and a connection and a higher level of empathy. I think that's one of the things. The second thing is, I think both people and the enterprise, this is a forced time of creativity, creative thinking, because they're forced to do certain things. Even companies that were somewhat apprehensive in being too remote or something, now they're forced to do that. How do we find creative ways to get the things done that you had to do without really having to be in contact? And I think a lot of people have come up with some really brilliant ideas, whether it's just a retail industry, whether it is the actual serious business, whether it is hospitals, all these telemedicine and everything. There's all this creativity that's come up. Now, some of it will stick, some of it will not, which kind of leads me to the third point, which is the entrepreneurship thinking has come. And I always believe in that adage where necessity is the mother of invention, because now you are forced to think differently. Think about ways you can do your business differently, maybe even better. And there are opportunities now. So you start looking at different things and you try some things, and the level of risk-taking has increased because the acceptance level on the other side, on the customer level, has been more favorable. So people are trying some new things, different things. And it's almost like one of those rubber band things when you stretch. At some point, yeah, you'll realize that, well, I can't stretch it this much. These are things that won't work. These are some things that will work. It'll come back. But hopefully it doesn't go back to the original, because there are some things that are so good now in terms of creative ways of doing business and connecting better, I think those should stick. So I'm looking at those 3 points: more empathy, more creativity, and more sort of entrepreneurial thinking. That will be better for everybody going forward.
Very good. Thank you, Shri. Eduard, can we hear from you?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us here. And as a mission-based health system, obviously we had to pivot as well, and there was quite a bit of surge capacity we had to build for. So we've really been intentional, focusing on 3 areas within the IT group, which is, like Bhavani and Sri said, focus on the employee engagement, increase it so we communicate frequently and rapidly. Then secondly, as we get new information and we see new data, we really rapidly prioritized, so we were able to, in an agile way, really make decisions and scale across the enterprise. And then thirdly, we really focused on nurturing productivity. Our teams had to deliver against those priorities to get the business outcomes we needed, because for us, we had patients and caregivers' life depending on it. So the good thing coming out of this is that I'm incredibly proud how our organization, not just IT, but in general, the organization has stepped up to the challenge and how we've been able to impact our communities. So there's a lot of, in this situation, there's a lot of good things we want to keep for the future. Like Sri said, like Bhavani said, I don't think we ever want to go back to the old way of doing things, because there is more value here and there's more impact we can have in our community, which is what we're all about.
Very good. Thank you so much. Kevin Haskew, can we hear from you? And what do you believe?
Yes, you can. Again, thank you for having us. It's interesting listening to everybody else's stories. We're maybe the same and similar in some respects. That we've got about 40,000 people around the world, and it's truly global. So one of our problems then was when we sent people remotely was the ability to make sure we could connect. We actually saw about a 4x increase in remote users. And so, obviously we weren't just sized to do that immediately. So we actually did have to react a little bit and add some extra service capacity and even licenses. The good thing is over the last few years, we've been working on a program of standardization. And so that really helped. But I also think some of our key vendors that we actually call partners, and it really is a true partnership. They were very forgiving and understanding, and they helped us very quickly. And we're talking a matter of hours, not days, where we were able to actually change some of our, say, licensing. And then, within a week, we had 16,000 consecutive concurrent VPN clients going, which was for us exceptional. The challenge we have is, apart from being manufacturing, we've got sites that we wanted to keep open. We also have design engineers, which are working on some high value stuff for the future. And we had to send them home. And there's 4,000 of them. And so the question was, how the heck do you have these design engineers with the high powered computers working remotely? Can we do that? We've never done it before. So we had a couple of weeks of just trying to finagle some of the solutions and capacity around the world. But once we got through that, the CTO is actually amazed that we could, one, do it, and two, he's now seeing some benefits of that going forwards. So again, you have to react. You have some luck, you have some issues, but you learn from it. And I think from that going forwards, we can really build on this. And I think it's definitely brought people closer together as well.
Very good. Craig, can we hear from you?
Hey, Lisa. Yeah, so it's been very interesting hearing all these stories. We've had a little less upheaval at Rimini Street because we were always kind of engineered for the remote work. About 80% of my team were in 17 different countries, have always been remote. So that interaction has been key to our success. We have done this because regional events can't knock us out. So we've dealt with hurricanes in the past and other localized disasters. We have to keep supporting our clients, and many of whom have been on the front lines in the fight against COVID. But you asked about the bright spots. Recently we've seen some more human elements to the always on kind of communication of our engineers. So we have some global teams doing some superhero for a day events. We've had more family participation, most unintentional, some intentional in video conferencing. I was sharing a story. We had one of the ladies that swapped in her daughter in a video conference and didn't tell anyone to see if they noticed. It was a real funny thing to do. And it's just, you see people coping in different ways. I think it has opened up a lot more of that human to human interaction, even though you know, we've always been working remotely. You kind of see that, especially with people having very changed home lives as well. So it's been very interesting to see that that pivot for us too.
It certainly has. Well, you know, I'm just thinking, you know, so many of you, you know, we all had to pivot in some way. But I was thinking about the acceleration. And Eduard, I don't want to misquote you, but I think you told us that telehealth visits have gone up. Is it 3,500%? Am I correct in that?
Across multiple health systems, we see numbers between 3,000 and 4,000%, yes.
Which is just crazy. And we were all talking about that. And some of us have experienced the telehealth and we kind of like it, right? So I definitely think there's some good things. So, and Bhavani, I know that you know, we were talking about your field technicians, you know, and how you've kind of had to retrain them or train them. You know, what so many of the studies are saying that the future is going to be owned by those technical athletes, if you will, those people that are able to, you know, be more agile. How have you guys in your, you know, different organizations, and I know, Craig, that you guys have been there for a long time, but how are you future-proofing your people going forward?
Yeah, no, yeah, great question, Lisa. You know, yeah, I've talked about this before with you. We've got a number of transformations underway, you know, from what we're doing with our customer care centers to, you know, what we're doing with our field workforce, our back office functions, you know, finance, supply chain, HR. So a big part of it is how do you bring, you know, your future operating models, you know, and integrate it into your future work process and technology. So it's kind of bringing in all of those aspects, right? And so that has been a huge focus as we are making these huge investments, you know, in our technology footprint. It's looking at it in the context of the, you know, future of work in those areas. And so, you know, COVID times have made it interesting for us. We've got a number of initiatives underway, and, you know, we're really thrilled about the investments we've made over the last 2 years. We couldn't have shifted as rapidly as we did if we didn't make those investments. So it is something that we will continue to keep our foot on the gas on in terms of just, you know, accelerating what we've already started. We've had to like get creative, you know, I forget who said it, but we've had to get really creative about how we train our field. You know, we're going through this major multi-year journey on transforming how our field, you know, does work as it relates to how we do work management, scheduling, you know, how we do asset management, asset tracking. And so it's really important that, you know, we're used to like having large training groups all in one place, face to face. And so we are really having to pivot and get creative about how we use technology, you know, to do that. And at the same time, you know, where it's needed, you have to have, you know, the face-to-face interaction to be able to drive the change management. But I think this whole space of training coworkers is going to go through a huge, you know, evolution as well from that standpoint. So yeah, you know, I think every organization, you know, the running joke is who accelerated, you know, the digital transformation, the CEO or the CDO or COVID, and, you know, folks are like, it's COVID. So I think the adoption curve has just gone up, you know, and we also see that with customers, you know, interesting enough, all our customers have had to go, you know, digital in their own lives. And, you know, it's, everyone has had to. And so you just have more, you know, more folks that are ready to engage, you know, from that standpoint.
Yeah, there's no time to be comfortable. Right? We've all had to stretch. I love the rubber band analogy there, Shri, that you talked about. We've all had to stretch. There's no doubt about that. You know, Kevin Haskew, you and I had talked a lot about this, and you were talking about your strategic plan. And you said the strategic plan is absolutely essential, but your strategic plan today doesn't quite look like it did maybe 4 months ago, right?
Right.
Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, and I'll tie into Bhavani's point there as well. You know, it's this whole thing with, particularly with IT, is you have to have good strategic plans. And a lot of people still don't like to do that. But you know, the beauty of strategic planning is once you start the plan, it's out of date, something's going to happen. So this is where you do need to be flexible and agile. And it's something not to be afraid of. So I thought we had a great plan beforehand, and we've got, you know, with that we actually had some good investments that gave us some, you know, modern equipment that helped us during this crisis. But now we have to do some lessons learned and look at our strategic plan and see what changes or tweaks do we need to make going forwards. You know, I think two big streams that have come out of this for us is one is the need for more collaboration. And as the users are starting to obviously enjoy working remotely, they're all asking for more and saying, what's the plan? And that's, you know, to me, that makes sense. But the other is we still have a lot of legacy applications. And the only way we can actually make that more available is through virtualization. You know, the old idea of VDI or a thin client, which we've actually had on the plan, but we were sort of slow walking it. We now need to accelerate that and put that, you know, down as a sort of next step, next year type project. To Bhavani's point, what I like with this is I actually think IT's got some great credibility now, having, you know, gone through and still survived through this crisis, where people, before there was maybe a reluctance to accept the need for IT, but now they actually understand how critical it is to an organization. We connect everybody, and the organization doesn't work unless IT is functioning. So I think if we come back with an updated strategic plan that builds on our foundation, but actually addresses and the capabilities that people are now looking for, you know, I think the next few years for IT is going to be fantastic. But it all comes down to then, you know, you've got to have a good strategic plan, and then you need to execute flawlessly to that.
Great points. Great points. Well, let's talk about this a little bit. You know, they're really, okay, so Craig, let me ask you a question. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, what is the lessons learned, and we're all having to reimagine for the future, right? And of course, nobody has a crystal ball, but we all have to rumble with this a little bit. So reimagining, what is customer service going to look like in the future? You know, we have internal customers and external customers. So can you talk to that a little bit, Craig?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is an area where there was a direction before COVID that is actually just continuing now. So fascinating within the customer service community. Go to all the conferences, and the key word there, which I had to learn, was deflection. So we've long seen companies try and deflect clients away to online knowledge bases and other sources of information, and we would call that self-service support. What we're seeing now is with the advent of AI and other new tech, it's just accelerating that. So we've seen, for example, demonstrations where there's human simulations of, you know, voice and chatbots, and it's moving people further and further away from customer service. So my prediction, crystal ball time, is that I think that companies will be very tempted to take that direction and to cut costs around customer service. And so there'll be those companies, and then there'll be companies with really good customer service. Great client service is actually about bringing people closer. You've heard from the others on the panel here. It's about bringing people closer together. And so I think those companies across all sectors now, not just IT, but all sectors, that can bring your employees and your customers closer together using technology are going to be the winners out of this. And I think as people become more and more familiar with telemedicine, with video conferencing, with working remotely, those companies will be the winners. So opportunities abound for those that take that leap.
Very good. I could not agree with you more. So, you know, we've all talked about this. So digital transformation has already received a boost because of COVID. You know, and many leaders are just hunkering down and they're playing it safe and just trying to keep the lights on. But then there are some that are not on the defensive side. They're going on the offensive, and they're looking at new innovations and that sort of thing. So, you know, we've already talked about the telehealth, and Eduard, I really don't see that necessarily going away. You know, I mean, I think that's going to be part of the modus operandi going forward. What other things in your particular organizations, and we've got probably time for this question, and then we're going to have to wrap it up, but in your particular organizations, what do you see around the bend in terms of innovations on the offensive side?
So I would say in our area, I think you're starting to see a split between the transactional and the value-added part. So if you translate that to a doctor's visit, when you have to fill in the forms and those things, I'd love for the patients to do that digitally. They can do it in their own time, because then when they sit with our caregivers, there's the real presence, there's the real connection, human connection, which then allows us to give a better diagnosis and better treatment. If I take that same concept and apply it to the back office, think about a finance function. I would love to automate and minimize as many transactions as I can, so I can take my finance people, have them focus on FP&A so they can help grow the business and make us operate better. And I think this way of looking at things, you can apply across most of our functions and most business models.
Bhavani, do you have something to say?
No, I think that, you know, well said across the board. I think the other piece I will say is just in terms of, you know, what are we, you know, just lessons learned, but what we can continue to rethink and pivot. We talked about how we think about the future of the workforce and how we leverage technology. I also think there is the aspect of the future of the workplace, which is really, you know, how is the physical setup of the workplace going to change, you know, and especially if you have a hybrid, you know, virtual workforce, you know, do you move more to shared space? And do you also think about, you know, you still want the social interaction, you need certain activities where there's engagement, you kind of, you know, what does that, you know, happy medium look like? I think as people are reimagining, you know, how we work, it's, you know, there's an element of that as well.
Right. No, that is an excellent point. And Craig, I know that we talked about that. And you said it's not work from home, it's going to be work from anywhere. And you guys are kind of looking at this as, you know, possible attraction retention tool.
Absolutely. So, you know, the ability to work from home, we've always been in that space, but now it's work from anywhere. So if you want to work from, you know, where your parents are living, for example, the opportunity to do that is huge. One final comment on this, I think that a key thing people can be looking at is around return on investment. And, you know, Kevin made a great point about looking at virtualization, for example. If your return on investment in projects right now can be measured in a year or less, great projects to invest in. So if there's opportunities to do that, as opposed to projects that don't really have a defined return on investment, you're not going to see something back in a year, just not seeing projects like that get any kind of traction. So that's kind of going on the offensive, focus on those where you know you're going to get a return. It's going to be within that 1 year period. And I think you'll see a lot of action in that space coming from IT.
Very good. Shri or Kevin, you guys have any final thoughts?
Just in closing, again, you know, I think this actually is an opportunity for us to shine, and I think there's a couple of things we can learn from and take forwards. And there's certainly 2 or 3 areas that we've seen that we can capitalize on and maybe get some more investments for. But I also then have to get centered back into reality and come back and make sure we keep this in perspective. Reality for us is we still have at least 20,000 people physically based at manufacturing sites where we're making physical products and they're being shipped. And they still need to, they can't be ignored. They still need to be supported, and we've got to find out ways to make their lives as safe and as efficient as possible as well. And that, I think that's a different track, and we have to make sure we don't lose sight of that.
Very good. Shri, you get the final word.
Okay. From my perspective, I think it somewhat summarizes what everybody's saying because it's very consistent. I think we are at a pivotal point. There's a cusp between where we've come from, which is a lot of focus on technical and just technology aspect of it. And it's kind of come to a point, whether it's forced or not, but due to this pandemic, it's kind of created a momentum. But there is that movement from just pure technology to what I would call an emotion involved in the technology. Because now you have to include those aspects that we are all talking about, which we feel, or at least we felt that there was no substitute to. For example, we said, well, there is no substitute to going and shaking hands with somebody. There's no substitute to sitting in front of somebody and talking to. There's no substitute to really being there in person. But Craig just said, they've been working anywhere for a long time. We all have been doing some. And now even those who are skeptics have begun to accept it. But what will stick going forward is the success of how much emotion can you actually put into that technology and make it feel like you are actually, it's a real substitute. It's not that bad. You are there, whether it is higher level of definition in technology, whether it's better video, whether it's better audio, whether it's more simulatory things, whether it is even, doing things like virtual things to put yourself in and seeing all of that, I think will take us further. And this is a great opportunity. But if we don't take this opportunity, I think it'll be like the rubber will stretch back, and over a period of time, memory is shot. People will go back and say, well, keep flying, meet me here, no more video and stuff like that. So I think that this is a challenge for us as IT professionals and a fantastic opportunity. And I think we should all take advantage of that. This is really the bright side of everything.
I could not agree with you more. And we need to hold one another accountable to that, Shri, to not just rubber banding back to the way we were before. All right. Well, we're going on to our next panel discussion. So Hunter, I welcome you back.
Hey, Lisa, awesome job.
There you go. Okay, guys.
Top panel
Thanks.
ever. Lisa Nichols, Corporate Technology Partners. Thank you so much. Sorry, Technology Partners. Shri, great job. Craig, Kevin, Eduardo, and Bhavani, awesome. Thank you so much. So next up, we have Tony Liang and Mark Polanski on the Industry Search Executive Update.
Hi there, how are you?
Excellent. Welcome to the program. So where are you coming in from today, Tony?
I'm in Northern California, another gorgeous day here.
Okay, a little context, right? So this is really a global summit, Lisa, we're bringing to you all in St. Louis, and we love coming to St. Louis and being here with you all. Tony was early on a fan and supporter. Whoa, hold on a second. A little bit of a doubter early on in 08, 09, 2010. The New York guy that I am, Connecticut guy, flew to the Valley, and on one of my very first meetings, we had coffee in the San Francisco streets, and Tony said, hey, Hunter, I think you're interesting. I like you. Mark Settle introduced us, I think, and Mark had an amazing corporate career as a CIO. And Tony said, but Hunter, we don't need another event in Silicon Valley or in San Francisco. We can go to 5 events a day. Is that a true story, right, Tony?
Totally true. I must admit I was skeptical, but Hunter, we're going to talk about leadership, and part of leadership is, taking risks and being courageous and pushing forward. And you demonstrated those capabilities back then, and hats off to you. And you were first out of anybody who does this. You were the first to jump on this virtual set of conferences. And again, hats off to you for that, because you've kept the community together. And
Thanks.
One of the problems is people can drift, and you've kept the knowledge, the learning, and the community together. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Tony. Hey, what do you think in this crisis, what's going to come out of it in terms of true leadership, true innovation, the winners and the losers?
So let me kind of tell you how I viewed this. COVID-19 followed, by George Floyd and some social issues. And let me just talk a little bit about those things. First of all, the CIO really now has 3 big agendas. The corporate roadmap, because it's changing business models. Frankly, tech people have saved a bunch of companies. So there's the corporate input, and there's a lot of skills around that. There's the technology roadmap. We've had, Bhavani and Shrikant, Kevin, Eduardo, Craig, Maria, all talking about what they've done from a technology perspective and the value they're adding at the top level. And the final piece is the people map. And what is your people strategy all about? How are you recruiting technologists and executives for this new future? And a lot of that is understanding, where the winds are blowing and understanding societal need, which means we need to start focusing on diversity of hiring. And that becomes another very, very big piece. In a second, we'll unpack what are the individual leadership skills look like, and what do I look for in executives? But those are the themes: corporate input, technology and IT input, and people input. Big 3 things people got to focus on.
Thanks, Tony. By the way, Tony is a managing director at Diversified Search, perhaps one of the best network tech leader search execs west of the Mississippi. How about that?
That's good enough.
Good enough, right? We got to give some credit to Mark Polanski. Mark, welcome to the program. Mark's the Senior Partner Technology Officer's Practice at Korn Ferry. a dear friend and collaborating with HMG and myself for 20 years. Mark.
Well, thank you for having me once again, Hunter. And it has been over 20 years that you've been a friend, a neighbor, a co-conspirator, a collaborator, and everything else you can imagine, and also a good friend. And I'll echo what Tony said. You were deliberate, you were purposeful and thoughtful about keeping the community together and keeping your company together. And I remember that Monday morning, 8 o'clock strategy session about maybe a week into quarantine, where you presented your vision of pivoting to a digital business model. And here you are running 2 to 3 of these a week. This is phenomenal. And we all thank you for what you're doing to keep us together, keep us informed, give us a little bit of a break in an otherwise perhaps a long day of work, and get some air in the old brain.
Excellent, Mark. Thank you for your support, and appreciate the compliments. What are you seeing out there, Mark, post-COVID? What's the search market look like? Do we have a V? Is it a swoosh? Is it a W? When's the turn up?
Yeah, so our business, Tony's, mine, the search business in general, is depending on who you speak to, often the 20 to 25% off range, with some verticals, namely consumer, which includes travel, hospitality, and leisure. Some of the verticals are off even more, and a few are off less. The one that stands out as being off less, of course, is healthcare, and it's a great place to be these days. We're getting busy again. A week ago, I said I don't expect to get busy till fourth quarter, because the good news about what's going on in the search market is that our work is not being canceled. It's being delayed. It's being pushed off, because our clients are telling us they don't have the bandwidth to work through a search with us, because they're so focused on surviving and thriving in a very difficult circumstance, getting 40,000 associates wired up to work at home, and getting all kinds of plans back on track. So we've respectfully stepped back a little bit, give the clients a little bit of room. And I was saying I expect to be super busy fourth quarter. And just this week, I've seen a spike in activity. And so 1 week does not a season make, but I'm optimistic. One more data point to provide. Today, Wall Street Journal and Deloitte and Forbes put out a report that said of the 5,000 or so CEOs they polled, more than half, almost 58%, said they expect to be back to the same revenue level and the same headcount level as before the crisis by January of 2021, just 6 months from now, 7 months out. Another quarter thought mid-2021, and the rest thought the end of 2021. So there's a lot of optimism out there, and I want to let everybody share in that optimism. For all the bad things that have happened in this country, in the world over the last several weeks, I think there's a silver lining.
Never underestimate that USA spirit, right?
Yep.
So Tony, back to you. They're going to be heroes and they're going to be villains. What does that mean?
Well, so, Bhavani kind of hinted at this. The heroes are the people who probably started working 2+ years ago and started rethinking architectures, addressing legacy. So when this hit, they were able to react quickly. Look, everybody knew it was coming. Nobody sort of thought, well, digital transformation's never happening. But it was 2, 3, 4 years out in some people's minds. And suddenly it's 2 months out. And those who had put plans in place and had strategies, and Kevin mentioned this as well, those people ended up looking like heroes. They are suddenly a big voice in the senior leadership team. They're having their budgets protected. Their agendas are becoming the corporate agendas. But the villains were the people who frankly weren't doing anything, have been horribly exposed, and will probably be kind of out of a job in the next few months, which is, again, an opportunity for Mark and I. And the other opportunity for Mark and I is, building those teams to address the challenges. Digital is driven by data. So people need to focus on data. They need to focus on digital agendas. All of those things are really important. And the heroes are the people, who are able to do the hard things. And hard things had to be done. People had to be furloughed. Some people had to get let go. And you can only do that and come out well if you'd built trust. So they built trust, they did the hard things. And then they had to also be what I call adaptively resilient. And here's what I mean by that. Think of a flame. A wind comes, it blows it out. That's not resilient. But if you're so resilient that a massive storm comes and it has no impact, you really don't have the ability to flex, to adapt, to do really, the right things, include people. That adaptive resilience has become important. Two key qualities of adaptive resilience: strategic patience, which means you plant, you water, and you wait for the right time to harvest, and vulnerability. No one has a roadmap for COVID-19. This is new for everybody. So don't pretend that you know how to do this. What do? You say, help. You ask for help of your team members. You become vulnerable, open, and demonstrate a little bit of, humility, which again drives your authenticity and drives who you are.
Hey, Tony, how important is strategic thinking and strategic planning with the business from a digital point of view, customer journey, customer experience, the whole business model idea, go to market?
Well, this is now pivotal. The IT is in a wonderful position. They see things end to end. And a digital journey is about data, and it's about understanding customer and user experiences along that path from end to end. IT is the ideal group to do this and provides all the building blocks and all the technology. Eduardo mentioned it. RPA can be used. There's all these things, NLP. We have the most amazing technologies to deliver improved outcomes, improved experiences, better engagement with our own workers and with our customers. IT, there's never been a better time. And if you build credibility and you can communicate and articulate a value proposition, boy, this is the time for you.
Excellent, Tony. Well done. Good job. Thank you. Hey, Mark, you talk about being a lifelong learner. In this pandemic, in this crisis, what are the things people should be doing right now when they have a little extra time every day, every week to prepare themselves for that next big role?
Well, Hunter, I'm not so sure that the IT leaders out there have all that much free time these days. They're pretty busy, but it's a question of making the time. It's having the discipline to put aside part of your day, part of your week to self-improve. And I've been preaching self-improvement for as long as I've been doing this, which is now over 25 years. And the idea is really quite simple. We need to be better people every day and better at what we do and better at what we know. And I don't really have much empathy for those who kind of stay pat and this is where I am and this is what I've achieved and this is what I'll be. But rather, I'd rather see CIOs and CTOs and other IT leaders that are putting time and funding as well into their own self-improvement. So communication skills, negotiation skills, listening skills, communication skills, etc. In addition to the technical piece, which is not down at the weed level, but at the functional level, at the business engaged level. So self-improvement is what I've been preaching for, as you know, for a bunch of years. And it's what our PhD psychologists at the Korn Ferry Institute tell us is perhaps the #1 determinant in success is continuous learning and lifelong learning.
Excellent, Mark. Thanks so much. Great to have you on the program today. Thanks for coming in. And thank you, Tony. Hey, we're going to bring Craig from Rimini Street back here for just 1 minute. Nikki, do you want to put that poll up here? We have a poll, folks, from that our partners Rimini Street want to populate here. Nick? What would compel you most to consider switching to a third-party support for ERP? 50% annual savings, you can read it all right there.
Thanks, Hunter. And yeah, we'd love to hear back from the attendees here, because this was a survey we ran before COVID. Very interested to see what the results will be now.
Excellent. And Craig, just before you go, one soundbite on the kind of work you all do at Rimini.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Hunter. So here at Rimini Street, we provide an alternative to Oracle and SAP and a few other software companies in terms of support, access to engineers with 10 plus years of talent. And we do all that while saving you a ton of money. So if you're looking to recoup some of the savings and get better support, then let us know. We're happy to help out. So many wonderful clients around the world, and we'd love to add a few more here. Would be great.
Excellent, Craig. Thanks for coming on the program. Great insights. Really appreciate it. And we'll bring the survey up at the very end. Next up is Don. You want to take it away?
Sure will. Thanks, Hunter. And welcome to the security panel on securing the future of work. Let me give you some of the sound bites that we heard today. Bhavani talked about in 7 to 10 days, shifting 65% of their workers remote. Tony talked about tech-saving companies. Maria talked about mobilization. Phil about enterprise risk. But here's, and Kevin, 4x increase in remote. But here's the one that really caught me. Nir said, the CISO owns the risk of the organization. And that's why all those faces in those pictures look so stern, right? So we're going to start out with this excellent panel with Erica Wilson. She's the VP and CISO at CAS Information Centers. And Erica, can you start by giving us a little background on yourself and maybe a little on CAS Information Systems, because we might be familiar with CAS Bank, and then how you manage that transition of your team, please.
Absolutely. So as Don, first, thank you for having me, and to all the participants and attendees today, thanks for joining us. I'm a cybersecurity leader who has a passion for promoting STEM education, and currently at CAS, I serve as the CISO. I also have responsibility for a few other functions within our technology organization. So I've had the opportunity to work in various industries, and the bulk of my experience is really directly in the cybersecurity space. At CAS, we're a service provider of payments and payment processing, and we've been around for over 100 years. We started as a bank. CAS Commercial Bank provides commercial banking services to small businesses, privately owned businesses, as well as faith-based organizations. And so at the core of what we do, it's payments processing. So a lot of our customers are in the manufacturing, distribution, and retail space, and we provide services, around expense management for freight, utilities, telecom, and waste at CAS. To answer your question around how we did and what was important for us when we shifted to more of a remote force and having staff working at home, we knew that the increase in that would result in immediately needing to create a sense of heightened awareness around security, because as it was stated earlier, there's a lot of risk factors that come with being at home. And we knew also that the attack strategies and methods were not going to stop focusing on payment services and the payment industry. And at the end of it, the core is that human factor, right? A lot of phishing attempts and even attacks, that human element is what we even saw right out of the gate early on with COVID, and seeing a lot of phishing attempts focusing on that human element. And so we shifted our awareness with some increased participation around different ideas that we wanted our employees to be aware of around being at home, being mindful of their own wireless setup and their networks at home. We wanted to make sure the conversations were really key on you're still connected to the business, keeping personal and business information separate, not sharing your device or using it for things that aren't approved, and then also making sure they were aware of some of the phishing attempts that were really on the rise so that they could be kind of on higher alert and guard. Because as I stated, that human element of security is still a very, very critical component to protecting the organization.
And Erica, you mentioned that you've been in security most of your career. Was there a challenge in working with your counterpart on the CIO side of the organization, or how did that work, especially remotely?
You know, not at all. The key to the success for us has really been engagement, that theme you heard today, and collaboration, leveraging the technology that we already had in place, very honestly, help with that. Even more frequent conversations around what's happening and how the business was responding and what they were seeing from our customers, what type of concerns were being raised. And so we were having those conversations on a more frequent basis than in the past. And that's what really helped us as well with the transition. Perfect,
perfect. All right, let's switch gears over to Mark Ashworth. Mark is the CISO at First Bank, and it's the bank that is your partner for the future. It's a really service-oriented bank. Mark, can you talk about your transition and maybe comment on the challenges that are specific to, the banking regulations that might have thrown curveballs at you?
Yeah, so thanks for having me today. And, with the whole pandemic and everything, it was definitely an adjustment for us because we're a people bank. We want to be face-to-face with our customers. And so, having to close lobbies and go into appointments and drive-throughs and then relying on technology to have that contact with the customers was, different for us, versus sitting face-to-face with people. So it's been a very interesting transition for us. And then on the back office side, we now have over half the company working from home. So, and been doing so since March. So that because of our technology that we put in prior years, it was an easy transition for us. We did have a spike of help desk calls, getting people used to setting up, and we were actually in progress of changing our MFA provider to another one. So we had to hold that project and bring licenses back up on the legacy system off of there. But other than that, that transition was really good. As far as regulation and everything, the big thing is the banking industry, like some of the others, are very heavily under attack since the COVID-19 pandemic has started. And whether it's unemployment fraud or other types of fraud, or to the cyber attacks, they're up almost 240% since February. So, there's a lot of due diligence that has to be done. Phishing attacks, ransomware attacks are all up, industry-wide. So really sticking with those basics, those security layers, making sure you have your asset management in place, patch management across all assets that you have, your vulnerability management, your user training on social engineering and red flags and phishing, and making sure keeping people aware of what's going on is really the big key right now for everybody, not just banking.
Did you have any OMG moments as you went through the process that you can share?
Only when we had a circuit go down. That was about the only time that we really was like, oh no. But other than that, everything, that was a minor blip, and unfortunately it only affected a small portion of people. So.
Good. All right, next we're going to switch gears to Paulo Bellotti, who is the global CISO for Mobilize. And I have to admit to you that I really wasn't familiar, and I don't know if you can see my picture, but you might be familiar with some of their brands, such as Ritz, Wheat Thins, Oreos, and Triscuit. And this stuff is sinful if you can see this can. So Paulo, can you feed us on the challenges related to the transition, especially for a global organization? And are there any unique situations being in the food products business?
Yeah, thanks, Don. Yeah, actually, we have a large portfolio of products, and I joined Mondelez about 2 years ago after spending a long career between CTO and CISO role in the automotive business. So my son was kind of tired of me getting new cars every year, and decided, okay, well, what about we switch to something more interesting for me? And snacking was the right thing to do. So Oreos is one of his favorite cookies, so that's great for him. But we sell our product in 150 plus countries. We have presence in more than 90 countries, 410 locations, 80,000 people around the globe. So it's plus the partners. So we did a large initiative with business process outsourcing, and we rely on offshore people to run our core process on the business side. And when this COVID-19 pandemic hit, it was really about running the business, not only from a manufacturing perspective and making sure we could make our snacking products and still distribute and sell them. But at the same time, we had to run all the back office processes in the same way. And we had to work with some of the vendors that contractually had some obligation from a business continuity perspective, but they were not prepared anywhere close to be prepared for such a large issue. And when they shut down India, basically in few days, they had to figure out how to keep their people with desktop, even bringing their desktop from the office to the home of the people who were assigned to our account. And on our side, it was all about, okay, so now what's going to happen? So beside being ready from an infrastructure perspective, having VPN, our remote desktop infrastructure ready to host 10, 15,000 people on any given day, it was about, on the security side, how do we get ready for the next wave of attacks? And we basically build additional controls on what we already had and focus on what was already top priority for us to monitor, like business email compromise, attack against VPN and Citrix, making sure fraud didn't happen with our customers, and things like that. So it's still basic stuff, but having a focused view around COVID-19, phishing attacks and other type of attacks that may happen in this specific scenario was one of the key things we did. And then from a manufacturing perspective, the very interesting thing for us was, or at least for me, was to see how quickly the manufacturing people adjust to the new situation. Social distancing in the plant wasn't easy to accomplish, but they came up with very creative solution to check temperature, to make sure they had plexiglass screen for the operators to be safe while still making our products.
And just, can you give us an idea how big your team is? And just, I bet you're dealing with every time zone around the world. Is that true?
Yes. So the team is about 30 people. We are in the middle of a major security program transformation, and with an objective to grow to over 50. But then we rely on specialized service provider to provide us with level 2, level 3 people, threat intel. We just acquire a bunch of feed for threat intel, and we have our own developer for analytics SOAR and other component that became critical to our business. But it's a 24/7 business, so we really have coverage across the globe.
And based on where you're sitting on June 18th, would you rather have been in automotive or in the food business the last 3 months?
Well, actually, yeah, I would say food business is kind of good, especially snacking. Actually, we had a very good quarter. Automotive, I would say not so much. Actually, I'm very close to my former friend in Fiat in Italy, and they had a drop of over 90% of the sale. So yeah, it's tough. It'll come back though.
All right, sure. Good. Well, last but not least is Tom Shuck, for VP and CISO at Emerson. And I really love the fact that Tom has a long background at Emerson, 28 years, yes, 28, and has responsibility for had responsibility for Emerson's network solutions organization, and has been in the cyber position for 10 years of that. So Tom, maybe from a global perspective also, can you share your experience and transition, and especially since you know both sides of the coin there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an interesting time. We have about 90,000 employees around the world. We're in 100 plus countries, and I do still own both the network and the cybersecurity infrastructure pieces. And this was very much both a network and a cybersecurity ramp that we went through. We had probably on average between 5,000 and 10,000 people that would work remotely, at any given time around the world, and we had to ramp this all the way up to support our workforce. And I really have to give a lot of credit to our partners. I mean, going to the telcos that we utilize and the hardware providers that we utilize, and they were there for us. And I value the relationships that we have with them, the long-term relationships. And I think it would have been very difficult for us to pull this off in the time frame that we did. We, over the period of about 2 weeks, we materially ramped up our bandwidth around the world. We ramped up our remote access infrastructure around the world. And on the cyber side, I'm really happy to say, and I give my team just a ton of credit, we had architected our cyber controls to be very portable, either on-premise for our teams or when people are remote, basically the same capabilities. And we ran into some challenges, with regard to things like patching, right? So we hadn't considered patching at scale. We have around 60,000 of the 90,000 are knowledge workers. When everybody's remote, and you talk about pushing patches across our remote access solutions, it's a little different. So we had to slow that down for a little bit as bandwidth ramped, but we caught right back up again. But we were able to think through a lot of those issues that we ran into. And again, the architectures that we developed over the last 5-10 years really saved us with regard to that.
I think it's because your extensive background, quite honestly. Can you think back, and was there a phone call or an email and you just said, oh my word, what are we going to do here? Or this is big, that you had to wrestle with?
No, I mean, again, I give my team a lot of credit. They've been here a long time too. So as we, started to realize just the scope and scale of the pandemic and what it would mean to us as far as working remotely, we were on calls right away, strategizing and thinking about it, and we jumped right into it and started executing. And I think by the time that, we started getting calls and questions about it, we were well on our way to making sure that we had what we needed in place to be successful with it. There were a lot of those moments, throughout that 2-week period where, I'll give you an example, somebody mentioned India earlier, right? And that was very quick, right? And a lot of the infrastructure, the last mile components in India are challenged, right? So we had to look at other remote access connectivity solutions for those folks. So we moved more towards mobile than a typical, ISP hardwired connection at those remote locations. We also ran into issues with ramping bandwidth in Asia, just in the cost of it. I mean, for those of you that operate a global organization, it's not immaterial. So we were able to take some of our traffic and route it to Europe, to London. We have a hub location there. So it was a lot of the, kind of real-time decisions that you have to make and the ability to kind of pivot and react. And I think it reflects well on the fact that we have a mature organization. We've got a lot of the capabilities in place to enable those rapid pivots, and we've got the expertise on the ground to help us think through it.
Great. Now I'm going to ask the next question, pick on you first, because I love you so much. But think of an organization smaller than yours, and the role is not split up into 2 people, and there's somebody wearing 2 hats, and they don't have quite the resources. How do they balance that workload, and how do they manage the 2 pieces and prioritize that?
Yeah, so smaller organization, I mean, there's a couple of things. I commiserate with my team sometimes about, I wish we were a little smaller, because you can do a lot of things really quickly if you don't have to worry about a global deployment. You don't have to worry about some of the challenges that come along with that. But I think it's having the relationships with those different teams and those different stakeholders in your organization, building trust, making sure they understand what you're trying to accomplish. Being able to lean on those different stakeholders. Partner relationships are key. Somebody mentioned outsourcing. I think for certain scale and size companies, that's an essential piece of it, right? And being able to lean on somebody that has a depth of resources and capabilities that you may not have available to you in your organization is a key strategy for a lot of organizations to be able to quickly move and adapt and change. Cyber in particular, it's interesting for me, managing the two different groups. The network areas, the life cycles are slower, right? So being able to implement a technology and live on it for a period of time is more the norm there. In the cyber area, because the threats change, it seems like weekly, we're constantly pivoting, we're constantly changing, we're constantly deploying new technologies. And it's a lot, again, when you think about the scale of the company and the kind of deployments that we have to do. So some of the smaller organizations, I think, benefit from that with regard to being nimble and being quick and being able to get those new things out there and stay in front of the threats.
Great, great. Erica, again, being on the security side, like you said, a lot of the time, what would you say to your friends out there who are CIOs, and are responsible for both sides? What learnings have you had that you can share with folks out there? Did I lose you, Erica?
Sorry, I was muted there. I echo a lot of what Tom has shared. It's really about keeping the goals of the organization top of mind, making sure any initiative or technology that you're looking to invest in is in alignment with the business and their objectives, and also just having a sense of how any decisions that you might make would impact people, whether they're internal to your organization or your external customers. You got to think about all of those things. And what I like to always say about our industry, and I kind of joke about it sometimes, like, you're never done, right? You're never done. Technology shifts, new technologies come about, and there really is not a time when you can get lax. So you got to stay on your toes. But the thing about it is you can't do everything at once. So you have to learn how to address priorities from a risk-based perspective, and also just make sure you're able to convey those risks and rewards in support of any investment decisions so that it makes sense at the end of the day for the organization. And I agree, when you're in a small organization, oftentimes you can move a little bit faster. You might be strapped for resources, but when it's time to deploy or push things out, it's not as much of a to-do versus if you're in a larger international or global organization that has so many endpoints and users. So those would be the things that I would offer.
And there's one other thing I want to ask you, because I had 3 daughters. I've always watched out for my girls. And do you have a message for either women out in the audience or parents who have daughters who are interested in technology? What kind of things should they look for to get to the opportunities, the success that you've achieved in your life?
Oh, absolutely. That hits home for me. I really get really excited about women and girls in technology. What I'd say is, there's really not a career that you can choose today that won't have some form of technology tied to it. So why not be at the forefront and be a leader and be a part of that technology and how to drive that? There are so many opportunities, and I really think that tapping into what you have to bring to the table, along with knowing that technology is going to be around, to really consider exploring that. And even if you choose a different career within STEM or any other career path, still stay very present in understanding the possibilities of technology, because you could probably get tapped on for a lot of special projects or initiatives when you're really in touch with where technology is going and where it's headed.
Beautiful, I love that. Mark, again, to our friends out there who have both hats on, CISO lessons that you might have, can share with them, learnings, a big aha?
Yeah, I think with this whole work from home, it's just doing the diligence of making sure that you have the foundations in place and being able to build off of that, and then managing those gaps, those risks that you have in between there. I'm like Tom, I had networking and security. So, to be able to switch hats to see, okay, how's the performance doing at one moment on the network and with all the remote users, and then and then keeping up with all the security. You know, it's a balance, and you have to just manage those risks and really just stay on those different tasks and make sure that you know which ones are going to be best for the organization at the time, or which one's going to hurt the organization the most, and address those as quickly as possible.
Do you have a secret on managing that balance of the network versus the security, or just experience? Because you don't have any gray hair, Mark.
Yeah, not too bad. At least it's hiding really good here on this video conferencing. So that's, but no, it's just kind of going with your gut and trying to just, you know, watch out and see which one is really the way that you need to go at the time. So
great. Paulo, from maybe both an automotive and a food perspective, what are your lessons that we can share with the audience from your experience, please?
Yeah, I think foundation need to be there. So if you have the basis in place, the attacks you see where most of the people will fall are fairly basic: business email compromise, phishing, and the fact that we always look at the phishing problem being just our own issue, and we don't think about our customers sometimes. It's something that could be addressed as part of this as an opportunity. So we look at fraud happening to our customers and say, okay, what can we do more for them? But on our side, if I look at just protecting Mondelez or any company, once you have your endpoint in check, you have your asset inventory complete enough, not 100%, which is very unlikely you'll ever have, and then you have proper email protection and a good, strong authentication, then you probably avoided most of the basic attacks that you'll see on a daily basis. So take the noise out and focus on the very, very important thing, the complex, the persistent threat that you will see against your specific company. And those are the things that a security team should focus on, together with explaining why security is important to the business.
And just one more thing, Paulo. We haven't really talked that much about training. How do you handle training on such a global basis? How do you teach us knuckleheads not to click on the bazillion dollars we're going to get from the guy in Nigeria?
Well, the Nigerians are very popular in terms of phishing nowadays. But yeah, it's about awareness and training and making sure we have the right connection with the business. So we do simulated phishing campaign on a periodic basis. We did one with the executives just at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, and then we do a recurring phishing simulation. And now we are going to launch a sponsorship champion and ambassador program with the business people and the IT people around the world to make sure we embed cybersecurity within their function, and we have a connection directly with the business rather than delegating everything to me or my team.
Great. Hey, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Mark and Tom and Paulo and Erica for their input.
I want to thank the panelists, guys. Great job, Tom, Paulo, Mark, and Erica. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Really appreciate your engagement, involvement. Stay safe and well.